I think I had to ask them this a couple of times because when I watched the video again, I said it a couple of times. Not because you didn't get it, but because I didn't get it. Hey guys, I'm Kellie and this is Leslie. Hi, Leslie. So today we're doing a video. It's just a recap of her client session that we did a couple of weeks ago, was it?
Mm-hmm.
When I do the sessions, I record the videos and just upload them unlisted for the clients only. But she had a very interesting piece come through her session that was completely new to me. I'd never heard it, never heard of it. She just rolled with it, and I thought that was brilliant. And so when she sent me a follow-up message, I asked if she would be willing to share this with others and let me record her in a kind of an interview style. So we're bringing this to you today. And Leslie, I want to say thank you so much for your willingness to share this part of your reading and your other side of the experience. I know when we talked the other day, I didn't want to ask too many questions because I wanted to get like all of I wanted to kind of hear it for the first time too. So when we did your session, one of the things that I noticed is, a lot of people come with questions like, what is my purpose? What is my path? Kind of some clarification on if they're making the right decisions or going in the right direction. And so you had a different set of questions. Like, you already are very aware of your gifts and abilities. You've been working with them for decades now. So to paraphrase you, you were born wide awake, with most of your clairs on. And for those who don't know what we're talking about, the clairaudience, clairsentience, clairvoyance, claircognizance, the clairs, I think most people watching this will understand that. So can you tell us a little bit about that? Like, just being born awake with all of these gifts?
I was called that peculiar child when I was young because, I had these abilities and I thought everybody did. And come to find out later that my relatives didn't and thought I was very different. But, because out of the known 10 ones, 10 clairs, I probably have a good 5 or 6 that are active and have been my entire life. So
Nice.
Not so much sight anymore. I kind of shut that one down, saw a few things that were terrifying and said, I don't want to see that anymore. So these eyes don't see that, but I know. Mostly it's hearing, smelling. It's the ability to perceive through feelings and emotions. It's that knowing that you know that you know.
Yep.
Being able to say the right thing at the right time most of the time. It's that kind of thing. And then just knowing, like, healing energies, so I work with all of those, and those are just kind of fluid. I've done them, like, to me, they're just like breathing. Like, of course I have that, why wouldn't I?
Right.
I don't even think about those. It's nothing I have to try to develop. Right. Mm-hmm. If I had to try to develop one, it would be psychometry, being able to know through touch.
Nice.
I sense when I do it, but that one is the only one I really haven't played with to try to develop. The others were just there and on,
right.
Like on.
Right. And so you were that weird child before it was like cool to be weird. Like nowadays, like people wear their weird on their sleeve,
Yeah.
We own our weirdness now. And I think that's a good thing. I think it's allowing people to relax into what's natural for them. And I find that more and more people are, these things are actually more normal and more common than we were led to believe or allowed to express. So I love that. And that makes total sense. Scorpio rising, just so y'all get an idea, Scorpio rising, her Uranus and South Node are in Cancer in the 9th house. We talked about past lives as teachers, as a teacher in several past lives, bringing that through into the 3rd house of like everyday communication. I'm not going to read all of your chart, but like Sun in Aries, Mercury in Aries, so very fiery, direct, which is great for the line of work you've done. She's also a veteran. You were in the Air Force?
Yes,
right?
I was.
Thank you for your
One
service.
of the first women that was put in the electronics field. They had just opened it up to women.
Wow.
So I got trained in computer repair, which launched my career in corporate America with computers.
Right. So what was it like having these gifts, being in the military? Because mine didn't really kick on until after I got out. So what was that like?
Or again, was that gift of being able to know what to say at the right time. It was intuitively knowing like something's about to happen and kind of guiding things.
Avoiding the landmines.
Yeah. Nice. Well, like I went through NCO leadership school and I was the first woman to command the school, so that was interesting. Aries. To have command over all of that. and
Mhm.
and look like I look, you know. So,
Right.
but it was, to me, that was just the most natural thing. And I didn't have any trouble with the people that were in my platoon or in the training class or in any
Right.
of that. It was
Right.
like natural,
Yep.
just of course, you
Mhm.
know. But it was more that it was always, to me, it was like behind the scenes, like I could see what was going on. And it
Mhm.
was the gift of knowing what to say at the right time,
That is
both in
really
the
a gift.
military and in corporate America.
Right. That's right. You're a corporate retiree. Oh yeah.
You know, the dark suits, white shirt, conservative
Mhm.
corporate retiree. So you can
Yes.
imagine how much fun that was.
Yes. And so the reason I wanted to at least touch on some of these points is veteran, growing up in our age, when these things weren't really known, or not so much known, they weren't really accepted. You know what I mean?
Right.
Especially
You
in
didn't talk
these,
about it.
right, especially in the military, in the corporate world. So you had these gifts on, you had the gift. And let me tell you, in those environments, especially high stress and high risk, knowing what to say, when to say it, is very valuable. And when you're
Yes.
dealing with people who need to hear it in just the right way, especially coming from a woman, that is
Yes.
very important. So I find that interesting. Glancing at your chart, you've got Aries, your sun is in Aries in the sixth house. So I find the lovely part of that is like the sun in Aries being able to be that direct. Also being a maverick, being that independent sovereign person. So doing it your own way, even in places that have that structure, and then in your house of service. So when you decided you were done with all of that, just not even starting over, bringing all of those gifts into what you're doing now. I know you were an advocate for like a child advocate for what, 20 years?
For 20 years. Yeah.
That's
I,
amazing.
my belief was do what breaks your heart,
Mhm.
and child abuse and child neglect breaks my heart. So I was an advocate for over 20 years, doing what I could to make a difference in a child's life.
Right, right. That
And
protective, yeah, absolutely.
mhm,
What was it like? I'll come back to the children later.
okay.
So, so the reason that I wanted to highlight just some of those points is you have a lot of diversity in
Yes.
both the practical side with the military and the corporate, and also this hyper awareness with your gifts. You are a mediumship teacher, is right? Is that right? You're a master teacher and
That's one of the things. I got into mediumship teaching recently because I've
Mhm.
always taught the spiritual awakening, spiritual ascension, that kind of thing, teaching about the clair abilities, teaching you to understand what you're feeling. And then I was working with one of my other students, and she's like, you really need to teach this class because everybody keeps coming to me after they've been to someone else saying, what do I do with this? And
Right.
so I'm like, well, that would be fun.
Mm-hmm.
And then I kind of just thought about it, and I got this. I'm like, okay, that was
That
my
was
guides wing slapping
the
me
wing
that
slap. There it
I did
is.
now.
The wing
Yeah.
slap. I love
Well,
that.
you know, I'm Aries, I'm Scorpio rising, and I'm stubborn,
Yes.
and I don't always listen. So
Oh,
I get wing slapped a lot. And when
I love that.
can't get my attention, they
That's
come to people like you to say, would you please tell her this? And then I'm like, oh,
well,
oh,
they
I have
weren't,
to
they didn't
listen.
wing slap me, but it
No,
was
they
so
wing
funny. I heard
slap
you say
me,
that now. Yes.
but they
Well,
tell you to tell me. And that's when I know, like, you've been trying to tell me this, right?
mhm.
I go,
I'm also
yes.
I can also be a little bit stubborn. So, I think it's a good pair. But on that note, so what came through the whole point of this video and what got me so excited, we were getting to this part where we were touching on like the Lyra. You've got your South Node up here conjunct Uranus, right? In Cancer. So bringing all of this through into the third house, daily practical communication. So you have your North Node conjunct Lyra, you've got Sheliak, the Lyra Ring Nebula, and 57 Lyra Ring Nebula. And so we got to the point where I was kind of giving you some background about like the Lyran Wars and the polarity and where it kind of started, originated, became more divisive, spread throughout the galaxy, landed in Orion and Sirius and all of that. So as we're talking about the Lyran Wars, right, and how the polarity or the polarity wars and how they got further and further apart and they spread around the galaxy. By this point, you had already shared several of these pieces of your background in during the reading, including the soul retrieval, your shamanic practitioner friend, right? And
Yeah.
so when we got to the Lyran part, and I hear the star guides telling me to tell you to do another soul retrieval, I'm I'm listening to whatever you're telling me, and I'm trying to not so much argue, but like negotiate with the guides, but like, she's already done a bunch of soul retrievals. She's teaching this stuff. I'm pretty sure she's good, you know? I was like, okay, I'll tell her. We were plugging away in your reading, just going through and talking about, you know, the different facets of your starseed lineages. We got to Lyra. We were talking about the polarity wars, and you know, you're just like, and so all of this felt like it was checking out, probably new information, or new to you, or different, you know, heard it in a different way, which is, you know, why you wanted the reading in the first place, right? Real quick, I know you had done some shamanic, like some soul retrieval sessions with your friend before. Can you walk me through that real quick? How did that go? How did that come about? Your previous experience?
When I first approached her 15 years ago, it was like, I want to do this soul retrieval, and I want to do a bunch of them because I want to clear all these past lives. I want to let go of the trauma. I want to heal. I want to get past this. And she kind of went gulp. And so we worked for, I think in the very beginning, probably 8 weeks, 2 to 3 times a week, clearing
Wow.
2 to 3 lifetimes per time.
Wow.
Because I was on a mission. It's like, we're only going to do this, and it's only going to take however long it takes. It's like, we're not doing a full blown whatever. We're doing just soul retrievals.
Mm-hmm.
And we did one after the other, after the other, after the other, after the other. And while you go, is there any more left? And she said, oh, honey, you're just getting started. Okay. So that's playing in the back of my mind. I'm just getting started.
Oh, wow.
So, you know, so she was used to working with me with those, but
Okay.
I knew from doing them the first time what the traumatic quantum leap that I experienced in my growth, my spiritual growth, the things that I could let go of, the things that I could heal,
Okay.
things that you wouldn't even realize were affecting your physical body now until you cleared and did a soul retrieval on a specific past life.
Really? Okay.
So those, I mean, we could talk for hours just on a couple of those.
Right.
So,
Oh, yeah. Mm-hmm.
so anyway, yes, but that's why I knew what to do with that.
Right.
Just
Well,
never, ever occurred to me I could do it with Starseed lives.
it didn't either.
So
It
talking
didn't
to you.
occur to me. Like I said, this is the first time for me too. And so I've read, you know, shamanic practitioner books. I understand the concept of soul retrieval. I know friends who have gone through it. I know a couple of friends who actually do that kind of work. I myself have not gone through that process. It probably benefit me. But so I was completely familiar with the concept, right? And what was so fascinating to me is, as we're plugging away with your reading, you know, the star guides are telling me like she needs to do another soul retrieval. I'm like, but she's already done a whole lot. I'm pretty sure she's good, you know? So as I'm listening to you, I'm hearing them and trying to negotiate, but I'm like, are you sure about that? She's done, I think she did like a whole 2 months straight. Her friend's probably done too, you know? And so I'm getting this information and trying to make sense of it. And they're like, no, she needs to do a starseed soul retrieval. I'm like, what? Say that again? And so this might not be a completely new concept. Some of you watching might have gotten this, might have already done your own process. I've never seen this before. I've never heard of it. It came through in Leslie's session. And that's why I'm like so excited to share it with you guys, because it was just fascinating. I'm having this moment with the star guides, and you're like, yep, okay, I can do that. And I'm like, wait, what just happened? You know, I'm still trying to wrap my head around what they said. And you're like, all right, that makes sense. I can run with that. I'm like, what are we doing? How are you doing that? And so it was this moment of like, it was so fascinating for me to just experience that moment of like, wait, how's this going to go? And so as we were talking, then they started telling me specifically what their parameters were for you and what would help you. And so I'm going to read what they told me, because I went back and watched the video as they said it to me. And you didn't flinch. You're just like, yep, got it. And you didn't flinch. I'm like, okay, well, let me get some words around this. So the guides, just so you understand how this is going, the guides are telling me this about her friend and giving her instructions to give to her friend. And this is what they tell me. The guides say, she, your shamanic friend, is going to reintegrate the 2 most extreme aspects of your past, the polarized aspects of your past lives, pull those together back into you, and then connect you to your most integrated future self. I think I had to ask them this a couple of times, because when I watched the video again, I said it a couple of times, not because you didn't get it, but because I didn't get it. So to give clarity to the people who may watch this video, Leslie is moving forward in some really amazing ways in her life right now. And so she came to the reading with just a few specific questions about directional points, right? Nothing major from the past. And so when this came through, it was about tapping into her past starseed lives. Okay. The way that I believe is we've basically, most of us, if not all of us, but most of us have been on both sides of the polarity wars, right? Especially if we're here doing this work. The reintegration process, you kind of need to know both sides of that vibration to really fully integrate it, right? Would you agree?
Yes.
And
You do.
so
You have
that's
to
what
understand it all.
right. And so that's what we were talking about at this point in her reading. And so when they said Leslie needs to go to her friend and do a starseed soul retrieval session, and
Yes.
Leslie was like, it's going to be 2 or 3. And I was like, oh, okay, and so it was about going back. Her friend was going to tap into the past starseed incarnations, probably in Lyra or as far back as they can go, to where she was the most polarized on either side of that spectrum for her in her experience, and pull those two lifetimes together, those two aspects of herself, pull those together into the retrieval, and then also grab the aspect of her future self, the most integrated aspect of her future self, and connect those 3 together in the now. And that was the instruction. So that's what you ran with. And I don't always hear back from clients about, follow-ups and stuff like that. Within a couple of days, you messaged me. It was like, I did the thing. It was phenomenal. It was powerful. I was like, wait, hold on. I got to hear about this. And so now we're going to ask Leslie, well, tell me about that. Tell me about the experience. How did your friend receive it? Like, whatever you want to share.
Well, initially when I read her your instructions, she was kind of like, okay, then when she tapped into her guides, it was like, okay, she knew exactly what to do and what to say. And so we did pull in, mostly it was from Lyra, and it was pulling in the aspects and then talking through them. And then because first thing she tapped in and she said, your aura is like a tornado. She said, you're trying to be in 4 lives at once.
That's what every girl wants to hear.
Yeah. Well, that's normal for me. So, but she was able to calm all that down and do that integration and then explain part of what she was doing. Cause she tells me part of what she sees. And she was laughing about some of the strange animals she would see, like that's the strangest looking elephant I've ever seen. And how not all of them were on planets. Some of them were on asteroids. I think my favorite comment from her was when she said, well, the asteroid is kind of like Treasure Island meeting Star Trek. And so that gets a whole new visual of what that was about. But mostly it was the clarity on things that I thought that I knew, but I didn't know that I knew. It was like, I've always known that I was a starseed, but I didn't know from where. So seeing your chart really, like, that made sense to me. Like everything clicked, like, yes. So when we were doing this, like things were just starting to click. And then you start to understand more about your purpose and how things got derailed or experiences that you've had. So it was tremendous. The biggest thing that I got out of that session with her was immediately my throat chakra cleared up.
Really?
I could tone at very high frequencies that I haven't been able to tone in for a long time. And it was just this natural tone and hold it for quite a long time. And I'm like, oh, that's nice. Cause it's been a while and I've not hit some of those frequencies that I've hit before. And it was just more of that settled, I know that I know that I know. And when you deal in metaphysical, spiritual type things, that's not an easy feeling to come to because you can't see it and touch it like you can a glass of water or the table. It's like you're trusting. So it just gave me more of that.
Nice. So that's got to feel empowering,
It does.
Especially with the work that you do.
Confidence too.
Right. What was you had mentioned something about feeling home or missing home?
Missing home. I went through about the next week of my morning routine is I go sit out by my pool, put my feet on the step in the water because I ground to water, I don't ground to earth, and watch the sun come up over the horizon. So that's my morning. Like that's what I do every morning. And I was sitting out there and I'm looking at the stars as they're starting to fade and the sun's coming up. And all I could say is I want to go home. And I didn't mean it in the sense that I wanted to leave the planet, but it was more, I wanted that feeling of home. Like I want to go home. I want to go back to that feeling of home.
Right.
This session with her that you helped facilitate was giving me more of that peace. Like I acknowledged that that's what I was feeling, but then immediately behind that was that, and you're connected. So it was that reconnection to what was home to me.
Right. So feeling at home where you are now.
Yes.
Nice.
Yes.
So when you say that you were able to tone at higher frequencies, do you feel that like the clearing helped you bring through or
Yes,
embody more of those star frequencies from your chart, from like just
both,
more of you?
both. More of me, more of the real essence of me.
Right.
And it's hitting that higher frequency. And as an energy healer, I'm very well aware of sound
Mhm.
and how that heals.
Right.
And I would just be in the kitchen or sitting in the living room, and all of a sudden it's just I'm you know,
Nice.
just making sounds. And then I get to playing with it. So it's like, well, how high up can I go and how low can I go? So I just start playing with the frequencies. But that
Nice.
was the first thing that I noticed, was it was a spontaneous ah,
That's
it's,
perfect.
yeah,
That's
it was.
wonderful. What did you initially think when they suggested that you go through the process again, but this time to reintegrate fragmented, like pieces of your fragmented cosmic energies?
Oh, that was just an of course. Like, why didn't I think of that? So,
Of course.
it was that kind of feeling. It was like, of course. It was nothing
Right.
strange and nothing absurd to me. To me, it was just the next logical step.
Right. Right. It just it's like, all right, that makes sense.
Well, if you do soul retrievals at all and you only focus on ones you've had on Earth, you're missing a piece of it, because nobody, in my professional opinion or my humble opinion, gets to the point of doing soul retrievals without the also conscious recognition you've had more than one lifetime somewhere not on Earth. So why would you not want to retrieve those parts as well?
Right. See, that's
And
I'm glad you said that. It was fascinating that it came through. And also, a friend of mine who has referred, like a lot of my clients come through referrals, you know, and so she's a shamanic practitioner, and I can't wait to share this with her, as maybe this is a new modality. Again, like, do you see this becoming more prevalent as like,
yes,
where's the training for this? You know, what would your shamanic friend say about like just trust the process and expand out
trust the
like
process. I
mhm,
mean, we're stepping into really strong ascension, awakening energy.
mhm,
And when you're in the early stages of awakening, that's where you're going to someone else to guide you through that. Once you step over into the actual ascension piece, you can start to learn to do that yourself.
mhm.
But you've had to have done a whole lot of homework in
Right,
order to get to that point where
right,
you can do it yourself. I'm almost there to where I can almost
right.
call up those lifetimes and do it myself. I'm not quite there.
Mhm.
But again, I've done a lot through the
Right,
years, a lot of
right,
training, a lot of release.
right. And on that note, like you are teaching mediumship, correct? You have a retreat coming up, don't you?
Funny thing about that, yes, I do. But,
Okay.
that wasn't on my list of things that I teach ever, because
Right,
I focus again on the awakening and the ascension piece. And I love that arena. And
right.
I had a friend visiting, and now she is a medium. She is a shaman. She
Mhm.
is a little bit of a psychic. She reads the Akashic records, and she was here. But I'm always the one she comes to when she has questions. It's
Mhm.
like she'll go train from somebody else and then come back and go, they just said this. And she knows that I'm going to give her a different point of view.
Right.
So we talk about that. And so she's the one that said, you really need to teach this. So I kind of sat with it for 30 seconds to a minute. And all of a sudden I get this, of course I do. So I start looking things up, and just within a matter of an hour, I had the whole thing outlined. Like, it all fell into place that quickly. That's
Ah,
kind of my guide to know
right,
I need to be doing this. So
right.
then I'm
And
talking
just
to the guides and I'm questioning, and it's like, they said, no, they were adamant, absolutely adamant. It had to be this year. And I'm going,
okay.
do you know how much it takes to put together that kind of an event? It takes 3 to 4 months, if not 6 months, to put it all
Right.
together.
Hmm.
And they just kind of streamline it. And they said, now you've got it together, go do this. And I'm like,
I love it when they
okay.
do that. It's like they take away all your excuses and you're like, well, I got to do it now.
Well, so I put it all together, and I'm prepared to do that. Now it's just
Right.
finding the souls that are supposed to learn from it to come
Right.
forward. So that's where we're at.
So on that note, whenever I hear the word medium, I think a lot of people hear the word medium and we think of just earth spirits or earth energies or energies around here. So I'm going to ask you a question, your professional and experienced opinion. Do you interact with otherworldly beings? Like, I know there are people,
Yes.
especially in this audience, who are very connected to their star families. And so they don't count themselves as mediums just because like they connect with their star families and they interact with Syrians or the Lyrans or the Haitians or whatever it is. And so
Still a form of mediumship.
Okay.
Still a form. If you think
Okay.
about like, what is a medium communicates with spirits.
Mhm.
Okay. They assume that they're dead. Well, for the most part, they are, because it kind of that fine line is I'm communicating with the spirit. I'm a medium if they're dead. I'm a channeler if they're alive.
Okay.
Is kind of how people
Oh, I
sort of
love that
define that.
clarification. Thank you.
But they're very, very similar. The skills are very similar. It's just that most people, when they channel, go into a trance.
Mm-hmm.
You know, I'm a wide awake channel. I get the information and it's
Me too.
coming. You know,
It's just stream of
nobody
consciousness.
takes control of my body because I'm an
Right.
Aries. You know, I don't give up control ever. You know,
Right.
but I will get your information and I will put it forward. So it's that ability. But when you think of mediums, it's not just Sarah comes to you because Charlie died and she wants to talk to Charlie. That's one form of being a medium.
Right.
Another form is I'm quietly in my kitchen cooking and here comes Sam, wants to talk to me because he knows I can hear him or see him.
Mm-hmm.
What do I do with that? What do I do with the ones
Right.
looking for light? What do I do with the ones that show up because it was sudden and traumatic and they don't even know they're dead?
Right.
So nobody's asking to talk to them. They're just saying, hey, you can see me, talk to me.
Mm-hmm.
That's another form of mediumship.
Right.
So that's the one I spend most of my time with, sometimes with animals,
Mm-hmm.
but I do get a lot of the interstellar work. I get a lot of that.
So
They've
tell me
been
about
coming to me for
that.
years.
Okay. When did that first start?
Sometimes-
How did you discern that it was the interstellar? I guess when you're working, it's like if I'm talking to a man or a woman or a child, I can tell the difference. And so when you know,
Right. And you can tell the difference because you can, we're trained to feel the masculine, the feminine, the infant, the older. We can do that.
Right.
The interstellars come in feeling different.
Mhm.
And their wording is different. Their energy feels
yeah.
different. And
Mhm.
some of them come in just like other spirits do. They come in with good intentions and not so good intentions.
Mhm.
So I've had experience with that. I've had the
Okay.
ones that have tried to scare me. I've had the ones that have tried to terrorize me. And I've had the
Right.
ones that are just lost and say, how do I go home?
Right.
You know, so,
Right.
but when I look back through my notes after we talked, I realized that I've been talking interstellar and galactic for years, well before I even knew that this was a thing. You know, it's just
Okay.
that showed up in my languaging and I'm like, oh, you know, because one of my healing modalities where I
Right.
actually use the spoken word to clear.
Mhm.
And when I was going through it and reading, it's like, oh, I have called in the interstellar galactic beings for years to come in and help me when I'm working with someone.
Interesting.
So it was just a natural next step.